St. Clair Country Club in what is truly a wonderful occasion. Talked to the high school principal this morning. Called him from Pittsburgh. I said, Terry, how's it going? He said, it's wonderful. He's never seen anybody relate so well to children, and isn't that really our business? So I'm excited to be here, and most excited to introduce Pat Buckley Moss to you. But I'd like to say a few words from her biography. Pat was born May 20th, 1933 in Staten Island, the second of 3 children of an Irish-Sicilian marriage. And if someone who also has an Irish-Sicilian marriage, I can really relate to that. And there's probably as many interesting stories about that as there anything else. Her artistic potential was recognized at a young age. Wonderful teachers in Washington Irving High School in Manhattan, where she received 4 periods of art per day. Doesn't that sound like fun? In 1951, she earned a scholarship to the Cooper Union, from which she subsequently graduated in fine arts and graphic design. Her husband's work took the family to Waynesboro in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, where Miss Moss came to know the Amish and Mennonite people who live in the valley. Much impressed by their ethics of hard work, integrity, and their love of family and the land, Ms. Moss started to incorporate these people into her valley paintings. Her first major award was 1967. Working in watercolor, etching, and silkscreen, she is widely known in this country and also regularly exhibits in Japan, where in 1990 she was given an exhibition of 53 of her paintings and etchings at the Tokyo Metropolitan Museum. Pat is well known on 2 other accounts. It's really those that bring her here today. Her work with special education groups and her donations to charity. Herself a dyslexic, Moss has become a role model in the learning impaired and is a frequent speaker to special education and handicapped classes. In fact, in 1988, Charles Kuralt described Pat Buckley Moss as the people's artist. Donations by her paintings and prints have raised more than $2.5 million for charities in this country and for relief services in Africa. Her list of credits and awards is too long to read at this point, but I have to point out a few. 1976, she was awarded the American Mother Artist of the Year. In 1992, the PBS 30-minute documentary, P. Buckley Moss Split the Wind. And of course, I could hardly pass out in 1989, the Nittany Lion Award from Penn State University. And lastly, in 1993, the Learning Disabilities Association of America's documentary, A Picture of Success, is with pride and a great deal of admiration I introduce to you Pat Buckley Moss.
Thanks so much. My mother is the little Italian, and she ruled with an iron hand. She's really great. My mother didn't know what to do with me, really, but she did find something to do with me, and I was eternally grateful to her. As you say, 4 periods of art a day is a lot of fun. But for someone who can't read, who is dyslexic, it was a lifesaver for me. It was really great. I remember being in grammar school, and I loved people, and I loved the classroom, and I loved the trees outside, and I couldn't read very well at all. And I remember we all did a composition, and I did my composition as well as I thought I did a wonderful job. And the teacher read out all these compositions, and she read out the wonderful ones first, and she got to the really rotten one. There was one that was really bad, and she said, this one has everything spelled wrong in it, and everything is in the wrong place, and everything was just not right about this one. And everyone laughed at the spelling of bear and different things. And when she was through, she said, and Patricia Buckley, this is yours. And I was really embarrassed. And that was the last time I wrote a composition. I didn't do very much again until I went to high school. And in my last year of high school, I think I finally bloomed because I met 2 teachers who made a very big difference in my life. So a teacher can make a very big difference in either direction. They can really just about ruin you and tie you up in knots, or they can help you blossom. And the reason I go out to schools is to tell kids to blossom. Doesn't matter what anyone says to you. You're a very special, very, very wonderful person. There are lots of children who can learn easily. There are children, I remember my aunt who used to try to teach me after school. She was my godmother, and she thought I was wonderful, and I thought she was wonderful. But she tried to teach me, and she would tear her hair out. She would just awful. I would read things, she would read them to me, then I would try to read them, and she would talk about the cat and this, and I would say the little pussy went to the, and I couldn't read them at all, and she just was so frustrated. So that experience was also very bad because I loved her very much, and I really wanted to please her, and I could not please her. There was no way I could do it right for her. Going to the Cooper Union was my mother's idea. Going to Washington Irving High School was my mother's idea. I went to a local school for the first year and didn't do well. And she said, I think that you have to go to New York City to a school where I went when I was a child. I went and I studied sewing and designing. And Washington Irving High School was run by Dr. Mary Mead, Dr. Margaret Mead's sister. And she was a very intelligent and a very wonderful lady. You can't hear me back there? Can you hear me all right? My husband's deaf and he's saying he can't hear, so get the hearing aids, Buster. He and my mother. I live with them both in the wintertime. And having dinner with them is a riot. What did he say? What did she say? What did he say? What did she say? And I usually say, I'm going. And I go upstairs and work. It's just wild. But Dr. Mead was really very special, and the school was wonderful. I had the 4 periods of art a day in high school, and that really, I think they had that school for people who did have learning problems before they really realized they were learning problems. If you wanted to sing, you could sing. If you wanted to play an instrument, then you had 4 periods of instrument. If you wanted to sew, this is a high school. If you wanted to sew and design, you had 4 periods of designing or designing fabrics and things like that. And children could go to work and then come to school for those few periods a day. They could come and do all their academics and sometimes take the 4 periods a day that they had for design to go out and work in the actual work field. By the time I got there, my mother went to school there. That's how she knew about it. My mother was an Italian immigrant, and she lived down in Little Italy in New York, and that is how they found that school. And when I couldn't survive in school, she said, I think I have the place for you. So she went up to New York City, and in New York City you can move around in the school system. And so I was able to go there and commute back and forth. I traveled for an hour and a half every day on trains and boats alone. That's not counting the walking time, but it was a lifesaver for me because I had the 4 periods of art a day. And I had teachers there who liked what I did and complimented me for it, and that was very important. From there, I wanted to go on to the Cooper Union, and the Cooper Union was a scholarship school, but my art teacher wouldn't recommend me for it because I was not under her control. She was very much a control person, and she would have everyone in the classroom crying at one time or another. But I was a very tough little kid, and she couldn't get me to cry, so she wouldn't let me take the test for the Cooper Union. So I went and did it behind her back, and I was about the only one who got in, so I was very, very pleased with that. And then when the principal came down and looked at the portfolios, she said, why wasn't this portfolio submitted for a scholarship? And the art teacher didn't say anything. She just didn't say anything. I don't even remember what she said, but I was so pleased that the principal thought my portfolio was good enough that it should have been submitted for, and it was a good portfolio. If I say so myself, it was a very good portfolio. And she was a pretty wonderful person, so that made me feel pretty good about myself. The Cooper Union is a very special school. It is with the understanding that you don't really, you're not really marked on what you do. It's that you do it is what is important. That you are able to do it is not important. That you do it is important. So if you are able to complete an assignment with ease and not have to work, you might get a very much lower mark than if you had to really struggle. But in struggling, you've learned. and you've grown. And I thought that was a very wonderful way to be. So it made sense to me, and so I worked very hard all the time. I used to work through lunch. I would spend my lunch hours in the etching studio, just etching, because I thought it was just so exciting, and the work I was doing. What I'm trying to say is, if you give a child a pat on the back for what they can do, rather than discriminate against them for what they can't do, and underline what they can't do, you'll get a whole lot further with the child. And the child will be a much better citizen, a much better human being, and a much more productive person. Dyslexic people are not handicapped people. They're gifted people. People with learning differences are gifted people. They're gifted because it's not easy for them to go straight down that line and get those marks. They have to come in from different directions to find out what's going on. And because they have to come in from different directions, they invent things, and they see things that you don't see when you go straight down that line. And they do things that are different. They sing differently, they dance differently, they perform differently, and they invent differently. So if you give that child a chance, if you understand that this child is not a disruptive human being, but a creative human being, look at their eyes and look at how exciting they are. We were just in a school in Juarez, Mexico, just outside of El Paso, across the border. Sorry you can't hear, Malk, but you should come up close. You're deaf. Okay. But we were just there, and if you could see the eyes on these kids all come from poor, poor families. But these kids want to learn, and they want to do things. And their eyes are so exciting. And they are as exciting as the children you find all around our country when you speak to them and you see these kids who really want to be good. I'd like to have pleased my father and mother. I'd like to have pleased my aunt. I'd like to have been able to understand the stock market. My father was a broker. I'd like to be a doctor. I'd like to be a lawyer. That's not my gift. I am 62 years old, and I have only been reading for the past 5 years. But I can windsurf, and I can rollerblade, and I can ski, and I can do all those things because they're natural things to me. But I cannot read really well. A book that takes my husband a week at the most to read takes me probably 6 or 8 months. And I carry it with me, and it's heavy, but I enjoy every bit of it. But it just takes me a long time. But think of all that I've missed in these years. Think of all the years that I've missed reading about what has happened in this world and what people have experienced. Think of all the experiences I've missed. All those wonderful things and all those crazy things and all those wild and erotic things that people do. I've missed all of those things. I didn't know about them. But perhaps that was to my advantage. I don't know. What I paint is what I love and how I feel about life. And I tell a story to people in my paintings. I tell a story of love and support and companionship and all the schmaltzy things in the world that I love and that I feel very strongly about. I have 6 children who I absolutely adore. My husband has 4. I adore them too. We have 10 grandchildren now, and we'll have 3 more by the end of next year, and it's absolutely wonderful. We can hardly wait to see them all. We can hardly wait for them all to go home too. When I was a child, I was a failure. When I got married, I remember my father saying, "Oh, thank God she's married. I don't have to worry about her anymore. You know, this kid is really dumb, you know, and I've really had to worry about her all her life." Well, you know, I just wish my dad was around now because he really would enjoy so much of what this dumb kid has. This dumb kid, as you say, has had a Metropolitan Museum show in Tokyo, which was wonderful. It was absolutely marvelous to have that show. But what was really wonderful about it, and what I remember most about it, was being on television with a woman called Tetsuko Kariyanagi, who is, we call her the Johnny Carson of Japan. She is so well known over there. How many people watch her every day, Malk? Something like, well, anyway, her book sold 13 million copies. It's called Toto-chan. And it's about herself, and it's about her school years, and how she was taken out of the school system because she was so disruptive, and how her mother found this man who ran a school in a little old train caboose car. And he did different things with them to help them learn, because these were the incorrigible kids. and he took them on walks. He let them sleep overnight in the caboose, and he did different things with them, and they learned and they were creative. This woman is the television star. She is the most wanted actress in Tokyo. She's beautiful. She's the representative to the third world for Tokyo, and she is also probably very dyslexic. After we got through and we read her book and we were through the television, we were supposed to be on for half an hour with her, and she kept me on for an hour on television. And after we were on, we walked off, and I said, we read your book, and we really feel that you're very dyslexic, and that's what happened to you. And she said, after listening to you, I feel that way too. And we really do feel that she is dyslexic, and she found a teacher who could help her and who helped other children, and how that I am a very successful person. I'm monetarily very, very well off. This is what I tell the little kids when I talk to them. I have many houses, many cars. I have a museum. I have boats. I have everything. I can travel anywhere I want in this world. Still, I don't tell the kids this, but still, I know in my head that I am this stupid, dumb, and retarded person, because I never had anyone tell me that I wasn't when I was little. Never. I received a cultural laureate from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and when I went up to get that cultural laureate, you were escorted up with a man in a tuxedo, and you were escorted back. And when they called my name, I rushed up there, I grabbed that thing, and I went back. And Malcolm said, these were his words, he said, "Christ, what's the matter with you? You didn't wait." And I said, I was so sure they were going to find out that I was a stupid, dumb, retarded idiot and take this thing away that I just ran up and grabbed it. And I really felt that way in my mind. And I know who I am, and I know I'm all right, but I also know that I'm that stupid, dumb, and retarded kid. So we have to help those kids early in their life. That's why we work so hard on this program. And that's why all of you must work so hard. And that's why all of you must appreciate. A child that learns different is very intelligent, and they know when you think they're dumb. They know, and they will act accordingly. If I know you think I'm stupid, I'm going to act up every single time. I remember sitting in the back of an auditorium once because I was a big, tall kid, and I thought, God, this is boring. This is so boring, and it's going to go on for at least an hour. And I was still in grammar school, and I don't know what grade I was in. So I decided I would play this game, and this game was to chase a bee that wasn't there. And I would go like this. And before I knew it, all these nuns were standing around me, and they thought I was gone off my rocker. And I was so embarrassed again. But I was having a really good time in the back, and I figured nobody could see me, But kids are creative who have learning differences. So give them a chance and help them steer in the right direction. Really, really. And you'll have creative people giving you gifts instead of supporting prison systems. Because if they don't get their accolades from you and from their parents, they're going to get them from the people on the streets. They're going to get them from the drug dealers. And they're going to get them from everybody else. So, pay attention to those kids who learn differently. That's the only reason I'm here. I'm wealthy enough to stay home, folks. Any questions? Yeah?
How were your children when they went through school? Were they special schools?
I have a couple of dyslexic kids. Out of 6, I have a couple. And my John had a terrible time. And I realized that John was like me. John is 6'5", and he was that tall probably in grammar school. And everyone said, this big, dumb kid, Well, John isn't dumb. He studied marine biology, and he studied forestry. And there are some things John can't do. And what he can't do, he just doesn't do. But what he can do really well. And I tried to get him tested, and they said, no, he doesn't need to be tested. He's just a lazy boy. And so this was in junior high school. So I wasn't smart enough then to know that I could do it anyway, that I could have taken him to Charlottesville and have him tested. I thought I had to get permission. You had to get permission. You had to get... And so I never did. And then John didn't last. He loved marine biology. He loved diving and getting the specimens, and he loved all of that part. But there are parts he didn't like about the book work. And then John studied forestry, and he liked that very much. But there are parts he didn't like about the book work. So John really loves the garden, and he really loves animals, and he really loves to cook. So Malcolm said, let's send him to chef school. So he said, John, how would you like to go to chef school? Well, John is a wonderful chef now. He's the chef of a country club like this, and he is thrilled out of his mind. But he didn't want to take the head chef because he wasn't like me. He felt stupid and dumb and retarded. John was afraid he would fail, but he took it. They insisted he take it, and he's doing a beautiful job. He's really very excited about it. He doesn't like working all those days a week, but he's very excited about it. He'd like to work 4 days a week. And I said, wouldn't we all? Wouldn't that be great? It'd be really fun. My second daughter is the nurse, and she had a hard time getting into the nursing school she wanted to get into because she's not a great student. She's a hard-working, wonderful girl. She's the kind. And then my Chrissy, he's our little macho man, you know. And what can I say about our macho man? He's the one with the mustache and the, he's a big guy. Just call me Chris, you know. And he does everything. And the girls always say, oh, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. You know, they hand out down baby clothes. Well, he doesn't take used baby clothes. He's going to have baby. He doesn't take used baby clothes. That's it. Even from his sisters. And I can't believe he's not taking this stuff. The kid grows out of them in 2 weeks. But, you know, that's our macho man. So you've heard about my family. And our son, Jake, Malcolm's, one of Malcolm's sons, he helps run our business on the East Coast. And we're very grateful for him in our business. So our life is pretty good. And we consider ourselves pretty lucky. We think that our families have done very well, and we think that our obligation is to help other children. And so that is what we do, and we very much appreciate you teachers. I don't know if any of you know, but we are judging now. We have a $10,000 award each year for the teacher who works creatively with children with learning differences, and $5,000 of it goes to the school and $5,000 to the teacher. And Malcolm will be reading the applications this year. And it's wonderful to do this because the applications are marvelous. You just want to give it to every one of those teachers. They just are so wonderful, such caring people. You just have to have, you know, I was saying at lunch too that you almost have to be dyslexic to understand what a learning difference is, or you have to have a child that is learning different. But be very patient with your little children who have those learning differences, the ones you have at home and the ones you have in those classes, because they're very special people, very, very special people. We wouldn't even have the light bulb, remember? We didn't have learning different people. Any questions?
Dad, could you tell them what happened in Japan after that interview, after all the media were there?
Oh, yeah, after all the media were there, and I talked about dyslexia, and they said they didn't have dyslexia in Japan. And I had been to lunch, and I saw a Down syndrome child there, and I thought, they have Down syndrome. How come they don't have dyslexia? And the next day, we found out that they have many, many dyslexic children, many children who learn differently. They're just not included in the system, and eventually they have to drop out or go into the classes for the retarded, and it's not where they belong. And so we helped start a school for dyslexic children in Japan. We helped the group, and Yomiuri Shimbun, which is the biggest newspaper in Japan, came to the United States and did a six-series study on dyslexia. But these parents who came with their children were wonderful and bright-eyed, again, those bright-eyed kids that want to learn and want to do things and just have to steer them in the right direction. And there were these sane kids, Japanese kids, you know, and there they are. And they were going to get lost in the system, which is what happens to a lot of kids. But thank God we have people who care, and where there can be inclusion, we have those children included. And the main problem I see is to help the rest of the school understand the children and let them know that they're not retarded and that they're not stupid and they're not dumb, that they just learn differently. You know, I tell the kids, too, that a lot of people who made fun of me when I was a kid and called me stupid and dumb and retarded, they work for me now. You know, and that's important. It's really important, you know. And they say, well, do you say nya, 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 and make fun of them? And you say, no, you don't say nya, 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 because you understand that they didn't understand and that they don't understand or they wouldn't do it. Sometimes kids are so frustrated, and sometimes teachers are so frustrated, and sometimes parents are so frustrated because they just can't understand why you can't learn the same way they could. So that is it, and I thank you for listening.
When I hear something like this, because I think of all the experiences as she's going through them, and I think of the wonderful life I've had. I'm not ready to die, but I think of the wonderful life that I've had, and the wonderful places I've been, and the wonderful people that I've met. I have been a most fortunate person. I have done the work that I've loved doing. I worked very hard at it. I just said to my maintenance man, who said we're both working too hard. He said, you know what? I couldn't stand not working. I said, you know, Snooky, I couldn't stand not working either. It would drive me crazy. So we're doing what we really love to do, and we're very, very fortunate in this world, and that's what we really have to tell our children. If I had not had support in my mother and a couple of very good teachers in my life, I probably would not have gotten here. I could have gotten a lot of trouble. Because in my life, if you left me alone in the country with a couple of friends, we broke into cottages to look around. We didn't take anything. But we'd go in the back window and we'd walk around to see how people lived. And we'd climb out the window again, and you know. But we did a lot of things like that. And we smoked cigarettes up on the railroad tracks. And, you know, I did things that could have eventually got me in a lot of trouble if I kept going that way. But I met really true, you don't know about those things, do you, Malk? I never told you about those. But I'm just thinking of all of these things, you know, as you're talking. And it's really good. That's my husband, he doesn't know these things. I haven't told him all these things. But we used to have a lot of fun. I used to meet my brother Buckley, who lives here, and Freddie Cleveland, who used to live way up on top of the mountain. Freddie would come down early in the morning, and Buckley, Freddie and I would take off. And we'd go swimming in the creek, and we'd go playing in the woods, and we'd play cops and robbers, and we'd keep going up the stream and up the stream. And as the stream went way up, there was this little cabin, this one-room cabin up on top of the mountain, and had a little screened-in porch with holes in it, and that's where his grandmother lived. And she used to have these wonderful big pies out on the porch, big blackberry pies. His granddad would pick the blackberries, and we'd go in there and have blackberry pie with his grandma. And then we'd come back through the woods and back through the streams and take another swim. And we'd be out all day long. We'd be exhausted and hungry when we got home. But that was a good life for me. I didn't succeed in school, and I really loved being out in the woods. I remember when report card time came and I had to go home, I would take the long, long road through the woods, long path, and I would wish that Tarzan would come along and get me before I had to take this report card home to my Sicilian mother, who was a really hot-tempered little lady, and she really thought I was impossible. I didn't tell the kids this afternoon, but my mother used to pack my bag religiously and say, when your father comes home, you're headed for the home, you're not my child. Because I was impossible. I had a lot of interest and I had a lot of curiosity, and I would walk miles to go sleigh riding, and when it got dark I'd have to walk miles home through the woods. I always had to go through the woods. I knew all the paths in the woods. When it's dark at night and you're walking home, you get kind of scared, and you wish you were home in your nice, comfortable house having dinner. And when you got home, your mother would say, where the hell have you been? Bango, when you'd get it. And I got it all the time. And when I started showing and I'd go to Atlanta for a week in the winter, my mother would come and take care of my children. And I had a son, Christopher, who was exactly like me. He would be the last one home. And one night he thought, well, I'm really going to get it tonight. So I think I'm going to cut through the creek in the winter. So Christopher walked through the creek in the winter, and he got wet up to his thighs, and he got up, and he got a whipping anyway. He said, well, it wasn't worth going through the creek. I got the whipping anyway. But that's a kid who is involved and thinking and working and very excited about everything you do. You have to understand these kids who are involved in thinking and working and doing things, because children are all different. My daughter has an angel of a child, Katie, and she's the ideal little dear, wonderful, wonderful, affectionate little girl. And then she has the redheaded Sarah. And Sarah has invented a new letter in the alphabet, and she's the only one who knows it. And it's called, I forget what it's called, something like double ack or something, and it comes after Z. And it looks like 3 A's in a row. And she said, nobody knows this letter, just me. So she thinks she's pretty smart because she's got this new letter. But this kid's mind is always working on something different, and sometimes she sees right through everybody, and she knows what you're thinking, and she knows what you're feeling, and she's just a marvelous kid. That's two wonderful kids, you know. It's just, they're very, very different. And I keep thinking, where would I be if I had not had my painting and my art? And if I couldn't read, and I didn't read, and if I failed everything in school, as I said to the kids today, I did a composition once, and I got the cutest little letter from this little girl who said, if I come back, she'll teach me how to write a composition, and it's going to be fun. But I was really put down for the composition that I wrote. The teacher read them all out, and when it came time to read the worst one in the group, she read out this composition that was horrendous, and everything was spelled wrong, and it was disgraceful. Well, it was mine, and I felt very, very bad. But I had my paintings, and the principal of the school said, your paintings are beautiful. And I was always sent to the principal because I was always looking out the window, and I wasn't paying attention, so the teacher would say, go to the principal. So I would go to the principal, and she'd say, what are you here for today, Patricia? You know, and I was there every day. So she knew me well. My sister was an angel, and I was not an angel. And my sister never had to go to the principal's office, and I was always there. But if she had not supported me, how bad I would have felt about myself. I didn't feel that great about myself anyway. But the art in the schools, and I'm doing a pitch for art in the schools, because I just heard that it's not, someone said, isn't it nice that you paint? It's not just nice that I paint. Would you want me to say, isn't it nice that you're a doctor, or isn't it nice that you're a lawyer? How sweet. And, you know, it's not the way it is. How wonderful that you're a doctor. How wonderful that you're a lawyer. How wonderful that you're an artist. Where would we be in this life if we couldn't look at beautiful things, or look at things that gave us food for thought, things that stimulated us? We have a statue on our front lawn in Florida that is 10 feet tall. And what we did was we bought this little statue at the New York Expo. And then we bought another one too. We thought they were both great. This guy was really good. And they were very expressive statues. Well, this is a very voluptuous woman. And she's got a tank of a body with legs that are pointed. And her arms are like this up in the sun. And she's got a little pin head. And when you look at the statue, it's like that. We call her Teresa Thunder's Eyes. But when you pass by, you have to look at Teresa. You cannot not look. And my studio is in the front of the house. And how long has that statue been up? 9 or 10 years. 9 or 10 years the statue is up. And there is not a day that goes by that a car doesn't come to a screeching halt and someone gets out and laughs hysterically. Or someone walks by and laughs hysterically. Or a bicycle stops, or someone runs up and puts their arm around her and takes a picture. Not a day goes by. I'll be talking to my children on the phone after 10 years, and I'll say, oh, there goes somebody with Teresa, you know, and that's what happens every single day. It's because it stimulates you, and it makes you feel like, wow, this is either hysterical or fun or wonderful. You need art in your life. You can't just sit at a computer and be alive. And you can't just play baseball and be alive. You've got to have food for thought. When you have, suppose you had a wonderful apartment, but it had nothing on the wall. I remember when my kids went to college, when Mary, my oldest one, went to college the first time. She took paintings and prints with her and hung them on her dorm, her room that she shared with another girl or two. She went to nursing school. And she said, people would come in and say, wow, you've got a P. Buckley moth. And she said, yeah. She said, she's my mother. She's your mother? Wow. She said, then I'd go home with them. And I'd visit their house. And I thought, God, they don't have any art on their wall. These gorgeous homes, $200,000, and they don't have a piece of art on their wall. Mom, I can't believe it. But that's because she grew up with the walls always being changed and always having art on the wall. So you really become familiar with it, and you come to love the warmth in a painting. You don't have to be an expert, and you don't have to have an expert choosing for you. You just have to love what you see, or have it stimulate you, or have it calm you down. I do a lot of blues, and I do very calm paintings. I do uplifting paintings. And I think the reason I do is because I am such a stimulated person, and I had 6 children, and I needed something to calm me down. So that is my paintings. My paintings calm me down, and I can live very easily with one of my landscapes in my living room or my dining room. I can live so easily with just an egret, an etching and a bit egret. I have one in my Florida house that's about this big. And I love to come to the foot of my stairs and see this great, lovely egret, and then look out the door, and there she is. She's out there in my yard. It's beautiful. It's just the things that you see around you are going to stimulate you, and they're going to. So when you build this new school, give it some exhibition space so these kids can show their work. Let them be proud of what they're doing, and let them know that you're proud of what they're doing. Don't cut your art program. It's really very, very, very important. You're not going to cut your baseball program, and you're not going to cut your science program, and you're not going to cut your English program or your math program. Don't cut your art program. It's really, really important. It's something all scientists should take art classes, and all mathematicians should take art classes. Actually, art is a form of math, I think. I think it's a balancing. And although I'm not a mathematician, I just think that I think of it in the same way as I do math. I think of art as math. Whenever I'm working with something, I try to show the kids today, but we had different age groups, and you really didn't have time to get into balancing things. But when I draw something, it's not just a cute something. It's a balancing. So you draw a face, and that is a shape. And you draw perhaps a hat on the face. That's another shape. You draw a neck. It's not just a neck. It's in a special position. And then you go on. Everything you draw is related to what you have already drawn. And in that way, to me, it's like math. It's going to balance, and it's going to work out and be finished, and it's going to stand, and it's not going to fall. So it is important to have art in there. The form of dyslexia that I had did not enable me to read. I couldn't read. And so if you can't read, you can't write, and you can't put a composition together. The teacher was right. I couldn't put a composition together. But she should have been able to find out why. You've got to ask why a child can't do something, and why they are over-energized, or why they're disruptive, or why they're saying, I don't want to do it. If I said I didn't want to do it, it wasn't because I didn't really want to do it. It was because I knew I couldn't do it. And if I did it, you were going to laugh at me, or you were going to make fun of me. So I didn't want to do it. And that's all. When I got to college, I had a professor there who understood it very well. And he would always say to me, if you don't want to take the test, I will give you this mark. And if you want to take the test, you will probably get higher. But I always say, I'll take the mark, because I didn't really care about the mark. And I went to a college that didn't care about the mark. I went to the Cooper Union in New York, and it really didn't matter what mark you got, as long as you were understanding and as long as you were producing and a productive person. You really had to work, and so it was a workplace. And I think if we can teach our children to work and to love work, I think that is one of the great lessons in life. if you're a teacher. Most parents can get so frustrated with a child like me, and you can't blame my mother for being frustrated. She didn't really understand why I couldn't get the marks that my sister got, and why I wasn't a sweet, dear child like my sister was. Well, teachers are like that too, and some parents I spoke to today said that too. They want to tear their hair out. You know, and I spoke at Vanderbilt University and worked with children there in Nashville, Tennessee. And I remember walking into the auditorium, and it was a big auditorium. It was bigger than this, and it was full of kids, and parents were way in the back, but we were trying to get all the kids up the front. And I came in the back, and one woman was saying to her child, "Get up, you stupid kid," and she's shaking him, and she's calling him a dumb, stupid kid. And I'm thinking, boy, this is just what you don't want. She should have been sitting down there talking to him and saying, you know, it's going to be okay, Mom, I'll go up there with you, and, you know. But she was shaking this kid and calling him stupid. He knows he's stupid. As I said, how many of you were there at lunchtime today? Well, there weren't too many, so I'll just tell you that although I am very successful, although I'm very rich and very famous and all of this stuff, although I speak on television and speak on the radio and do all of these things, I still know that I am that stupid, dumb, retarded kid. And it is that way because it wasn't caught when I was a child. And I did not get those pats on the back when I was a child, really. You know, I always got the bad report cards. I always got my mother saying that this was impossible and why wasn't I trying harder. I had an aunt who was a grammar school teacher and my father's sister, and she used to try with me, and I loved my Aunt Mary. And my Aunt Mary couldn't do anything with me, and I knew I was a failure. So although I know that I'm okay, that other part of me also knows that I'm a failure and that I am a stupid, dumb, retarded kid. So that is what we don't want our children to grow up with. That's what we want to catch very early in our lives. Malcolm and I work very hard, and we have a program called ACT that we foster. And this ACT program is a sponsor sort of program. It's where an adult goes in and commits themselves to a child for an hour a week during the school year. And for that hour a week, the teacher will tell them what the child needs. If she needs to work with math, or she needs to work with spelling, or she needs just to be read to. If she's an abused child at home, she needs just to be loved and petted. And there are so many children who come into a classroom and sit and freeze and don't do anything all day long, or are very disruptive. And this sponsorship program is really a super program. I remember one man said to me, I wasn't going to volunteer, but my daughter was a teacher and she needed one more volunteer, so she volunteered me. And I said, gee, I was retired, I was just going to fish and play golf and fish and play golf. But he said, nobody gets my little boy now. That little boy that he has is just doing beautifully. And another little boy did not get a sponsor. There weren't enough, because there aren't enough sponsors. There aren't enough people who will give up an hour a week for a school year. But it just takes a loving person. But this woman who had already taken the little girl said, well, I'll take him. I'll come in for an extra hour. So she did, and it came vacation time, and she was going away, and he said, well, and she said, now, listen, Tom, be a good guy. I'm going to go away. You just keep up the good work, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks. And he said, well, where are you going? And she said, well, I'm going to Africa. And he said, oh, you can't go to Africa. My father was mauled by a lion and killed in Africa. And she felt awful. She said, oh, my goodness. I'm leaving him for 2 weeks after building him up, and he's doing so well. And here I'm going to a place where his father was killed, and she felt terrible. And so after school, she went to the teacher, and she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've really let Tom down. And she said, well, what's the matter? And she said, well, I told him I was going to Africa, and his father was mauled by a lion and killed there. She said, his father was in here last night. He just doesn't want you to go to Africa. He doesn't want you to go to Africa. But that's how much that sponsorship program means to the children. And that's how much it means to the adults. The adults really, really care about these kids. There was one woman with arthritis that couldn't move her hands. They were just like claws. And she couldn't work anymore. And she was, she volunteered. And she got this little girl who had been sexually abused at home, and the father was taken and put in prison. But she could go to the little girl and touch her, and she could say, oh, you're such a beautiful little girl. This little girl didn't talk for the whole first half of the year in school. And this little girl just blossomed. She had someone who loved her, someone who cared about her, someone who touched her, had time for her, and was beautiful to her. I saw this little girl when I was leaving the school, and I said, bye-bye, Jamie. We'll see you again another time. and she came running out to say goodbye. This was a child who froze all day long in school, and when she went home, the bell rang and she just went home, but she didn't say anything or move all day long. And she came running out, and then she saw her sponsor. Well, she zipped right past me, and she put her arms around that woman with arthritis and loved her. That woman has so much love and so much caring from that little girl, and that girl has so much from that woman. All of the children seem to blossom. So it's something we can all do if we have. We were coming out just to speak to you, and we got this call the other day, and they said, we heard you're coming, and our school desperately needs you, because we have quite a few kids with learning problems. And the problem is the rest of the school accepting these kids with learning problems. And often kids can't figure it out. They can't figure out, well, for instance, my daughter can't figure out why her sister is gay. It frustrates her out of her mind why her sister is gay. And another person can't figure out, why can you play with me, and we have great games, and we can do this, but you're so dumb and you can't read and you can't pass anything. And the kids just can't understand why. And so, because they don't understand, they'll call the kids dummy, and they'll call them retards, and they'll call them fat fools, and they'll call them all kinds of names that are derogatory. And it's very, very hurtful for a child to be called. So a child asked me once in the 5th grade, he said, what do you do when people make fun of you, and they call you retards, and they call you dummy? You just say, you know, I can't read, but I'm trying very hard to read. I am dyslexic, and you know, you're very lucky that you're not dyslexic, and you can read easily. Maybe you can help me to read. And that's just something you can say to kids, because the kids who make fun don't understand. When kids made fun of me, and I tell the children too that there are some people who made fun of me when I was a child, and they work for me now. And they say, do you say nya, nya, nya? And I say, no, you don't say nya, 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 because they didn't understand. And they're very embarrassed that they don't understand. And they're very embarrassed now that they make fun of you, because they know now that you're a stupid, dumb, retarded person. But remember what I said. I still feel like that stupid, dumb, retarded person half the time. And I still feel like if something goes wrong, I deserve it because I'm dumb. Or if something bad happens, I deserve it because I'm so dumb. Why did it happen? Because I'm dumb, you know. So you don't want kids to grow up feeling that way. I know it's wrong, and I know I shouldn't feel that way. But still, it will come in and I will feel that way. Okay? Yes?
Are your images then from your mind, or do you go to the site and...
They're both. They're both. And I meant to today when I drove in, I saw that little log cabin, and I thought, oh, we'll throw that with the kids. And she said, well, we'll bring the kids down there. And I thought, no, I'm not going to bring the kids down there. I can remember just how that's built. And I can remember how that's built. I studied architecture for a couple of years, but I figured that wasn't my discipline. I'm not a disciplined person that way. I'm a disciplined person work-wise, but I don't like to stay within boundaries. And so I could have drawn that with them and for them today without going back and looking at it even, because I understand the way it's built. Yeah.
Did you ever take a photograph of a scene that impressed you that you were afraid perhaps you wouldn't remember, and then paint from the photograph?
Oh, many times. Many times you'll do that. Many times you'll take a close-up of windows and doors and things like that, or bushes that are around a place. I'm working on, what am I working on now? What university is that? Akron University. This is payback time. They gave me a doctorate. So I'm working on Akron University. So although I remember the building very well, I haven't taken pictures of the detail of the columns and the detail of the statue and the detail of the trees and where they sit. And they won't sit in exactly the same place, but it's not important. And the stairway won't be in the exact same place. It won't have the same number of stairs. And the stairway in front of the statue won't be exactly the same. But the feeling of the place will be there. Yeah? That's right.
I'm very curious what you did in terms of artwork when you were elementary school age.
When I was elementary school age, I did mostly horses because I loved horses. And I wanted a horse very badly. And my mother promised me a horse if I got straight A's. She was pretty safe. We couldn't have afforded a horse anyway, but we had a field that we could have had a horse in, so it was always a dream. And I told my teacher, my mother will give me a horse if I can get straight A's. In other words, could you give me straight A's? You know, I do a lot of calligraphic writing, and if you are an etcher, it's sort of like calligraphic writing, because when you etch on a plate, you work with a wonderful fine steel tool, and your drawing that you draw through this ground is bitten acid, and it has to be so beautifully flowing, not broken, and not, you know, if you're a jacket painter or a broken painter, it's okay to do broken things. But if you are like Art Nouveau lines, and if you like flowing lines, then when you work on that piece of steel or copper or whatever you're working on, you want that line to be flowing and very beautiful. And so you've got to be in the right mood. When you're in the right mood to do certain things, that's when you go to your drawers and pull them out and do them. And sometimes you can just finish things like Penn State. There'll be a day when I can finish Penn State, but it wasn't before the show. I couldn't finish it. But there will be that day, you know, and that's when you finish things. You don't, I start many, many things. I'm a different kind of an artist. I don't start a painting and finish it. I have hundreds of pieces in my studios. I have a couple of studios, and in both studios I have hundreds of pieces started. I have drawers of paintings. And when I want to go back and work on them, I do. But when I want to start something new, and I think this comes from being a child and my mother saying, finish one thing before you start another. You know, I start anything I want, and I start lots of things. But it's like being a writer and having to write down your thoughts. You've got to put them down when you've got them. And it's the same with a painter. If you don't put that group of thoughts down in lines, you lose them completely. You have different lines and different thoughts to write down and to paint, but you never have the same ones again. I didn't even want to go to Africa the time we went. We do prints for African Relief, and we've earned a few $100,000 for them now for the Mennonite African Relief Fund in Tanzania and Kenya. And he said, we really should go and see what they're doing over there. So we went over there, and as I said, we slept on the ground and we ate beans and cabbage for 2 weeks, and it was, I mean, I wouldn't eat their fish or their chicken. It was covered with flies all the time. They put it out on racks, and the flies just come down on it. No way I was going to eat that stuff. So I traded everybody my chicken and fish for their beans and cabbage. But to be there with those people for 2 weeks was such a wonderful experience, because they are sharing wonderful, great people. I have had tea in the White House, and I've had breakfast in the White House. But I have had tea in a hut in Boma, in the Ngong Hills in Tanzania, in Nairobi, out of Nairobi. And believe me, it was so much more exciting to have tea in that hut. And it was so...
You are so enthused. Were you enthused as a child?
Oh man, was I enthused.
Now what does happen if you're an educator?
And you get somebody like me.
No, if you can't enthuse. That's our big problem. The ones that we can't enthuse. You have suggestions.
There has to be something. Remember, I'm not a teacher. There has to be something that these children are interested. There has to be something that they love doing. There has to be something that the parents can come to you and say, they don't like reading, they don't like writing, but they sure like Superman. So give them Superman comic books to read, and they'll learn to read, right? The way I learned to read, and I still do it, and my kids still laugh at me. My kids are in their 30s, but when they're in the car and they're with me, they say, watch. If they're with a friend, they say, watch, my mother's going to read billboards, and they're going to be half wrong. Well, when I drive, I read billboards, and I read them so wrong. I still read them wrong. And that's why it takes me so long to read a book. Malcolm can read a book in a week or two, and it takes me 6 or 8 months to read a book. I mean, you know, but you're bored with it by then. But I'm not, because that's as fast as I can read. I'm 62, and I've only been reading books the past 5 years. So I have missed a lot, a whole lot. But I'm catching up very slowly, you know. But I listen to books on tape all the time when I read, when I'm working. I have a book on tape all the time. And I've got a library of them myself. And I'm always after our library to get more. And if they have something new, they always say, oh, I think you're going to like this one, Pat. But I usually take about 5 books out at a time. So I really...
You had 6 children
showed while you had the kids. That means you painted throughout the 6.
Yes, I did. I painted throughout the 6. And what I did was work at night. And then I would work probably until the kids got up in the morning, and I would get them their breakfast, and I would go to school, and I would go to sleep for a while. And then I'd get up and work again. I'm a great napper, but that's not a way to live. But if you want to work and you have a lot of children, you don't have a choice, so you work at night. I think I probably talked long enough, and you probably have to get home. So thank you so much for letting us come.